Next session, which is on emerging issues, specifically blockchain technology and implications on industry. So I would like to introduce my panelists today. On my immediate left is Rosemary Kimwati. Rosemary is a legal professional whose practice focuses on the legal and regulatory affairs in the fintech space. This dynamic field is constant need to try and make sense of how the various innovative tech companies with financial solutions can benefit the most from the existing legal frameworks. Rosemary has given advice on corporate governance, corporate structure, policy development, anti-money laundering, and risk management, intellectual property, engagement with regulators, as well as research relating to the deployment of fintech services in various markets. Rosemary is a member of Internet, LSK, and founding member of the NBO Legal Hackers, which is the Kenyan chapter of Legal Hackers, a global movement of lawyers, policymakers, technologists, and academics who explore and develop creative solutions to some of the most pressing issues at the intersection of law and technology. So that's Rosemary for you. Next to Rosemary is Fred. I will not attempt to pronounce Fred's second name. Let him do that before I massacre it. So Fred is Chief Legal and Officer at Bit Pesa, a Pan-African fintech startup that offers fast, efficient, and low-cost B2B payments to and from African bank accounts and mobile money wallets, with operations in African countries in East, Central, and West Africa, and a license from the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK. Pesa was the first company in Africa to offer digital currency forex brokerage, and is the largest market maker in the sector for African currencies. Additionally, Bit Pesa works with brokers around the globe, settling in real time between Africa and Europe, North America, the Middle East, and Asia. Before joining Bit Pesa, Fred was an attorney at Hogan Lovells, the global law firm where his practice focused on financial regulation and compliance and cyber security. Fred also spent 3 years as an attorney for the US, working on counter-terrorism issues, including terror financing issues. Fred received his law degree from Harvard Law School. Next is Thomas Kaberi. Thomas is managing partner at Optimal Consulting. Sorry about that, guys. Thomas Kaberi is managing partner at Optimal Consulting, an insure-tech startup using analytics and exploring blockchain application in risk transfer. Optimal Consulting is pursuing innovations in risk transfer beyond distribution to product development, inclusion and jacketing of various cultural approaches to risk transfer. Analytics and blockchain are currently the most viable technologies towards achievement of the above. Thomas is a customer-focused and value and process engineering expert with over 13 years experience working with local and international startups, SMEs, VCs, and financial corporations, including Massive Calls, Social Venture Development, Nest VC, Barclays Africa, and Google. So, I think you'll agree with me, we have a very interesting panel today. What I'm now going to kick off with. Oh, sorry, I forgot somebody who is not in the room here with us today. A gentleman called Eric Mwangi. So Eric is participating online. Eric is a project lead in HSBC London, and also one of the founders of HSBC's Accelerator program. He's also co-founder of Volt Global, whose main task is SME enablement in emerging markets. Eric is currently in MIT on a postgrad program on FinTech, the future of commerce. So, I would like to kick off this with a question and a video. Then I will ask Eric to come on board. I think we're having a technical issue. Let me try and resolve it. Robert? Okay. So, what is blockchain? Allow me to use an expletive. What the hell is it? How can it help us? And why we shouldn't fear it? So, before Eric comes on, I would ask you to give me maybe 10 minutes of your time for a small video, please. Please.
Who here has heard the word blockchain? Hands, please. That's great. This is 1993 to me. I used to stand up and say, who's heard the word World Wide Web? And every time I ask an audience that, I get more and more hands. Those of you who didn't put up your hands, you may remember the first time you heard the word internet, and maybe you'll remember today for a similar reason. Because once again, the technology genie has been released from its bottle, summoned by an unknown person or persons named Satoshi Nakamoto. This genie is now available at our disposal to rewrite the economic order of things and to transform society for the better, if we will it. I had a sobering experience a couple of years ago when I had to reread my 1994 book, The Digital Economy, which some of you may remember was the first bestseller about the web in business. And in that book I talked about this is an age of vast new promise and opportunity. It's also an age of peril and of danger. And I talked about some things that could go wrong. I said that technology will deliver many wonders, but it's possible that we'll have growing wealth creation, but also growing social inequality. It's possible that this will stimulate our economy and that there'll be GDP growth, but there won't be a commensurate growth in jobs, and the technology may actually undermine job creation. I said that surely the biggest asset of this digital age will be data, a new asset class. But it's possible that that data will not be owned by us, the creators of that data. It will be owned by powerful institutions that will not only prevent us from monetizing our own asset, but that will use this data, whether or not they're large corporations or governments, to undermine our privacy, which is the foundation of a free society. Well, I was kind of shocked in reviewing the state of things to realize that these had all occurred. The digital age has brought us many wonders, but when you look at the bottom line of how it's impacted our economy and society, it's a troubling report. What if there were a second generation of the internet? See, the first generation was the internet of information. We exchanged information, peer-to-peer, information being words or emails or pictures or sounds or music or videos and so on. But that internet wasn't actually all that good for business, and it wasn't good for peer-to-peer value creation because we couldn't exchange value or money. What if there were a new generation where we could exchange value peer-to-peer? Surely that would be a radical thing. Because the benefits and the largesse of the digital age to date have been asymmetrical. They've been captured by powerful forces. Well, it turns out that the next generation of the internet is, sorry, I didn't have that slide on the screen, is in fact based on the underlying technology of Bitcoin. Now, when you think about Bitcoin, the first thing that comes to mind is an asset. It's like gold. Will it go up or down? I don't think that should be of huge interest to you unless you're a speculator in commodities. Bitcoin is something larger. It's a digital currency or cryptocurrency that's not created or controlled by nation states. That's of much more interest. But what is of huge, and should be of huge interest to you, is the underlying technology called the blockchain. This is the greatest innovation in computer science, to me, in a generation, and it holds vast new potential. Now, the blockchain is basically a large distributed ledger. It's a distributed database, and it runs on many, many computers, ultimately hundreds of millions of computers. And it's open source, so anyone can change and add to the underlying capabilities of the protocol. Think of a global spreadsheet. And this is a spreadsheet where information can be stored in a way that's immutable and uncorruptible and unchangeable. Because if you wanted to hack a transaction, let's say I paid $20 and I want to send that same, I just sent that file to JP, and I also want to send that same file to Matthew, I would have to do that in the full light of the most powerful computing resource in the world. Some people say that all of Google's servers in the world are equal to 5% of the computing power of the blockchain. I'd not only have to hack that on a computer, and all large computers are hackable, I'd have to hack that across all of the hundreds of thousands and ultimately millions of computers on the blockchain. And I'd have to hack it for that block, that little 10-minute block. It's kind of like a heartbeat of the network. When a transaction occurs, peer-to-peer collaboration called miners use clever code to solve a mathematical problem. And they use a lot of computing power to do that. And the first to find out the truth and to achieve consensus on the network for that block gets paid some money, digital currency, usually Bitcoin. But that block, that 10-minute block, is linked to the previous block, which is linked to the previous block. So if I wanted to hack this transaction, I'd have to do it across all of these computers, not just for that 10-minute block, but for the entire history of commerce on that blockchain. This is not practically possible. So here we have a global, unhackable, distributed database that's enriched with a currency, and that holds some pretty far-reaching potential. Now, the Bitcoin blockchain is one blockchain, and it's the most important blockchain. So lots of controversy about it, has been off and on, but there are others. One that I'm particularly interested in is called Ethereum. And it's a blockchain that has a whole bunch of value-added capability that enables developers to rapidly build capability on top of it. Just before Christmas, I spoke at the Ethereum Developers Conference, and I walked into a room about 5 times the size of this, and there were people in every seat lined up 2 deep, all along the sides and all along the back. The smartest computer scientists, as in 1993, the smartest VCs, the smartest academics, the smartest entrepreneurs have figured out that there's something big that's going on here. And in the audience were people that were building a new model of a stock exchange, people who were transforming the music industry so that artists get comped for the value that they create. There were people building an entirely new set of systems for the banking world. There were people building personal identities that are portable and in a black box that can protect your privacy. In that room were people building apps touching virtually every aspect of our economy. and of our society. Now, lots of other people have got into this. The Economist wrote a cover story on it. They called it The Great Chain of Being Sure About Things, or the Trust Machine. I've been calling it the Trust Protocol. And the banking industry is big time into this as well. Now, the banks view this as an opportunity not to radically change the global power grid. They view it as an opportunity to deal with a very fundamental problem in banking, that we have this Rube Goldbergian model of financial services systems, where you tap your little card in Starbucks and a bit stream goes through like a dozen different computers, some of them being 1970s mainframes, and 3 days or 4 days later, a settlement occurs for this transaction. Well, the opportunity for the banks is with these distributed ledgers, there is no settlement. Everyone's looking at the same database. I pay you, the transaction is settled. So this could radically not just simplify the entire banking system, it could create a whole bunch of new value-added capability as well. So this just came up this morning. It's the website for my new book. The book is called Blockchain Revolution, How the Underlying Technology, or the Technology Behind Bitcoin is Changing Money, Business, and the World. I wrote the book with a 29-year-old investment banker and technologist.
I think I'll stop it here and invite my first panelist, Eric, who's, I'm not sure which part of the world Eric is sitting in right now, but he'll tell us just now. Eric, 5 minutes or less, initial comments. Can you hear me, Eric?
Yes, I can.
All right. Over to you.
Sorry, come again?
Over to you, Eric.
Sorry. Can't hear you.
I'm saying over to you. We are listening to you now.
Oh, great.
And we can also see you, so don't do anything funny.
Yes, thank you, Ali, for the introduction. And I think we've had a basic introduction of what blockchain is. And I'm not sure whether everybody can see my screen. Okay, what is blockchain as was seen in the video? We were told it's an open data with a distributed database. I think what would be important to know is what is the difference between the distributed database or distributed ledger and the central ledger. So there is some illustration here whereby, can you see my screen? Great. So as you can see in the illustration,
Eric, you can't see your screen, but you can just talk it through. We can't see your screen, but just talk it through.
Okay, alright. In a distributed database, the control is centralized, and this is what currently is on current banking system, whereby on the blockchain, the database is distributed, whereby control is duplicated, and that's why blockchain becomes a very efficient. So some of the advantages of the distributed ledger are resilience, security, and creation of trust. If you were to look at blockchain almost as a metal, the chemical, if you look at it as a metal, the chemical composition will be almost like a diamond. And as we know, diamonds are very resilient in the chemical composition. And blockchain almost illustrates that. Blockchain is currently regarded to what we call as the fifth horizon of network innovation. So fifth horizon in terms of we have seen in the past what technology has done in transformation from the review, cloud, mobile, and now blockchain. So blockchain is seen as a driver in what technology will be in the future. Some of the potential transformation blockchain is driving, as we have seen in the video, is operational infrastructure, whereby blockchain technology streamlines financial infrastructure, eliminating intermediaries, i.e. clearing houses. We also have something very interesting in blockchain called smart contracts. So smart contracts is, for example, I bet for some reason, USAO will win the channeling, and somebody else bets somebody else. So that conversation or that arrangement goes into a smart enabled blockchain network. And once whoever wins, the blockchain or smart contract will self-execute and pay whoever wins through verifiable sources. So we're seeing whether we never need more in the future. It's the beauty of blockchain. So we've seen what's the Internet of Things, another area of transformation blockchain is driving, whereby we've seen a machine-to-machine commerce where payments will take place in an automated fashion. You're driving your car and your car runs out of fuel, it goes to the station, your fuel will pay and drive off, or in this case, it will drive you. So what we call Internet of Devices. And then something I find very interesting, lastly, if I may, call the wisdom of crowds. In 1906, just a bit of background, Frank Galton, half-brother of Charles Darwin, went to an ox-weighing event in Plymouth, England, to witness ox-weighing competition, where people from the public would guess the weight of an ox. And what he found was startling, whereby the average median of people who guessed was 0.08% of the actual weight of the ox. And that actually formed the first basis of now what you call these networks. Sorry?
Eric, we need to wrap it up now so that
yes.
the other panelists.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Just one more minute.
Yeah, so let me just wind up with this, where we're seeing whereby the connections or the assessment of interactions of the network will give you more data than your own statistics. And that's probably what you call in now social physics. And I think I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Much appreciated. All right, great. Great info. I would now like to invite Rosemary to give us a brief statement. Rosemary, keep it under 3 minutes, please.
Good morning. Now, we'll have a discussion today on Bitcoin, and I've delved into this matter, basically in regards to how we as Kenyans accepted it. In as much as the local community accepted it in terms of transfer and remittance, how do the regulators look at it? On December 15th, we got a notice from the CBK saying, don't deal with this, we don't regulate it, and we want nothing to do with it. Yet all we know today is that blockchain technology is going to be like the next big thing. The UK government today has a whole support of blockchain technology in regards to how can it influence different industries. There's insurance, there's finance, as has been greatly spoken about this morning, and even more important to other industries like even real estate. Think about it today. How long does it take you to transfer a piece of land from one person to another? At least 3 months if you're lucky. Or even a new house which you're purchasing. But with blockchain technology, imagine a situation where you remove so many middlemen and just have the transaction between you and the person who's buying, with some beautiful technology in the middle that assists you in regards to ensuring that nobody else double transacts, and also ensuring that in a few clicks of minutes or even a click of a second, you have your property transferred to you. This is what blockchain could do for us. Many times in technology today, and even as we develop, we never developed our systems aligned together with technology. What happened was that we basically got the title deed, so to speak, in the lands registry, we scanned them, and the processes remained the same. The same thing with banking. Taking a loan is more or less the same way it was 120 years ago. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Oh, my apologies. So, can you imagine banking? 120 years ago, it's still the same. Where you go straight to the bank, borrow a loan, then they sign, they evaluate you, and do whatnots. Supposing a system where I needed money and just passing through a very simplified system, I could go ahead and actually have my transaction locked through blockchain technology. And it would eradicate so many middlemen, and it even eradicates even the cost implications. And this is, yeah, I'm sorry about that. And this is where blockchain technology actually comes in. And what should we do to accept it? How will it change our lives on a day-to-day basis? As was mentioned earlier, there's so much data that is out there that we don't even know how to transact ourselves, and we don't even know what to do with. How about we got a technology that made our lives so much simpler, and there are so many reasons for us to accept it. The pros is the AML function. As was earlier mentioned, it's very difficult to counterfeit in cryptocurrency and also the blockchain technology. Because one thing is that the double entry problem, I don't know how many accountants do you have in the room? There's the usual issue of double entry, where you put it and then you have to put it on this side. Blockchain cuts that out. Because immediately you've done a transaction outside, it's locked on the other. Okay. And then the next thing is, of course, speed and cost. Today, in remittance, you lose about 5% of your money when you transfer. How about if you had a system that only costs 1 cent, 1 US cent to transfer? And that's how amazing the technology is today.
Thanks, Rosemary. I think when Rosemary talks about AML, she usually means anti-money laundering, not the Mercedes car. Okay. Now, let me allow Fred to jump in. Fred, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ali. And for those of you who are wondering how my surname is pronounced, I know there's a lot of Y's in there. It's very difficult. It's pronounced Mzungu. So don't let the spelling fool you. There are, I think, 3 big issues that I would like to touch on in my introductory remarks about the ways that the blockchain is affecting industry. The first is interoperability. And the beauty of the blockchain is the beauty of the internet, which is it's open source and anybody can plug into it. And so one of the ways that my company uses it is to connect businesses here in Kenya and across Africa to businesses all around the world. Now, we don't have operations all around the world, but we know that we have counterparties all around the world that do. So if we have a Nigerian business that needs to make a payment somewhere in China, we don't need to build our own proprietary operations in China, because there's another company that can communicate directly with us via the blockchain just like that. It's easy to build onto and it's easy to use. So it makes building a business that much easier. You don't need to start from scratch. You don't need to build your own internal system. You don't need to then pay for the development costs and the maintenance costs of your own internal system. You can just plug into this large interoperable system. It's like sending an email from a Gmail account to a Yahoo account. It's not entirely within the Gmail system. You can communicate with people who use other systems. The second thing is speed. Rosemary already touched on this, so I won't belabor the point, except to say that the advantages of speed are staggering. The Bitcoin, the blockchain, reconciles across all of those tens of thousands of copies that the speaker on the video mentioned about every 10 minutes or so, which means that you can be sure that your transaction has gone through in those 10 minutes. And indeed, in many cases, you can verify it in mere seconds. Compare that to a bank wire transfer that you're trying to make, or even worse, the title deed search if you're trying to convey a piece of land. I mean, we're talking days, weeks, months. This is virtually instantaneous. And the third thing is the importance of regulation and governance. And I'll harken back to the earlier panel, the first panel of the day that we heard talking about the development of governance when it comes to the internet. That's where Bitcoin and the blockchain is right now. It's very young, it's very new, and the development of governance surrounding it is still ripe for countries like Kenya and countries all across Africa to play a major part in it. Unlike the internet, like ICANN, which continues to still be controlled by the US government, because that's just the way the internet developed, blockchain doesn't need to develop like that. If there are countries across Africa that are willing to take a leadership role here, I know that Nigeria's central bank has created a digital currency working group, and I know this because my company is part of it. In DRC, we've had very productive conversations with the central bank there, and we anticipate a letter of no objection any day now. They've already verbally told us they'll issue one. This is the kind of leadership that African governments can show, and Kenya can do the same thing and really take a leading role in the governance of the blockchain as it grows.
Thanks, Roy. Much appreciated. Over to you, Thomas.
Good morning, everybody. Who's ever taken a bet? Yeah. Who has ever taken a bet? Like on Mwangi-Fintech, Betway? Please don't raise your hand. The reason why you probably trust a gambling company more than you would trust an insurance company is because you know what the odds are, right? Right? Some betting companies actually allow you to set your own odds, right? And this would be the scenario of applying blockchain technology on insurance, where everybody knows what the odds are and that they're sure they're paying the right price for the right odds. And that speaks to the transparency that blockchain technology will bring to risk transfer. At Optimal, that's what we do. We try to bring transparency to the process of risk transfer using blockchain technology and analytics. So, just as I asked, that people are very proud about the bets that they have taken, most of which you have lost. And you still would take them again. So, the penetration in this, the retail penetration in the insurance industry in this country is below 3%. And people are willing to take bets on Spot Pesa and others rather than take an insurance policy. And that's because of the trust and transparency aspect that people don't entirely understand about risk transfer. So that is just one of the kinds of applications that, and you can see how much bigger in terms of revenue and turnover this kind of technology would bring to one industry like insurance, for example. But the biggest downside, which my colleagues have not mentioned, about blockchain technology is the public aspect of blockchain technology. It's because it's a distributed database, it's a distributed ledger, then there are very high chances that everybody would know what's on that ledger. So, and that's the biggest downside. But there's good news. Over the last 6 months, a company called Coda, those who follow blockchain technology, you might want to read them up. Coda is introducing private ledgers. So it's still blockchain technology, but only those people who are involved in that chain are able to see what's in that chain. So that is the second biggest project blockchain technology as far as we are concerned, because now it allows people to set up like compliance standards within their organizations using blockchain technology and monitor them. It allows people to have smart private contracts that are as secure as any other blockchain contract, but are still private. So I think I will stop there and wait for and of course gambling. Yeah, gambling I'm waiting to see how that plays out in Kenya, because that will be really interesting to watch. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. My take-out from Thomas on insurance basically is what he's telling us that whenever we're insuring, we are playing pata-pata. I don't know. Not really. You will answer to that as we move along. But before I open this up to the floor for questions and comments, I just want to mention a number of industries that could benefit hugely or be disrupted, whichever the case may be, by blockchain. Of course, at the top is banking, payments and money transfers, cybersecurity, academia and academia records, voting, and I can see one IEBC somewhere behind, so I'm sure the next session we'll be asking him some of these questions. Car leasing and sales, networking and IoT, forecasting, music, ride sharing, stock trading, real estate, insurance, healthcare, supply chain management, computer storage, energy management, sports management, loyalty programs, and government and public trust. Okay, I would like to open this up to questions, comments from the floor. I'm happy to do 5 questions and then we move to the next. So whoever wants to ask questions or make a comment, you could possibly line up behind the gentleman. Introduce yourself and then.
Okay, good morning still. My question on Stevie Gibsoness is my name. The question I have on blockchains, and it sounds extremely exciting, is I'd like to hear more from Rosemary and Mzungu about some of the key regulatory issues that perhaps our central bank ought to have considered, sort of before throwing the baby out of the bathwater. Some of the things that the did you call it the Reserve Bank in England or Bank of England has considered, some of the things that the committee in Nigeria is looking at. What are some of those concerns? I do think that in fact the Central Bank of Kenya is quite open to technology. I can see Rosemary shaking her head. When the initial application for M-Pesa was made to Central Bank, were they not open? And I think that's a basis I'm making, obviously. Maybe things have changed, maybe they've become closed-minded since then, but I think perhaps there was a lot of obfuscation in terms of what they need to consider, how they can open themselves up. And that tends to be the challenge in my view with government. So I'd like to hear a lot more about what are the things that central banks can work with, can consider in terms of opening up that space in a bid to then create some level of licensing, trial licensing, if you will, of that sort of technology. The second question to Kaberi has to do with the distinction between the private and the public systems, if you like. It would seem to me that by introducing a system where you have entities or people or individuals that have access to a sort of private blockchain system, then it detracts from that basis of it being open access literally and providing that level of accountability. It would also seem to mitigate against providing a system where if you had to try to hack into it, then the chances of you succeeding would mean you'd have to live for 1 million years and get into the whole commerce back chain. So that seems to be less of an advantage, or perhaps I didn't understand the explanation between sort of key distinction. Thank you.
So just to my panelists, please take the notes. Yes, sir.
Okay, I am from Nyandaro Youth Organization from rural Kenya, and I have questions for all of you. And my question is, you want to eradicate like Rosemary, you have said that you want to eradicate the middleman. And as you know from the economics, the middlemen play a major role in developing. And how would they help to create more employment or more innovations for the youth? The second question is that from rural Kenyans, we are very behind in terms of technology. What are you doing to ensure that every innovation that you're coming with will support and will support the rural people in everything that we do, especially in terms of insurance. Like most of the rural Kenyans, we experience risks in terms of our agriculture product. How will you help us to come with the best odds in terms of ensuring agricultural products? Thank you.
My name is Magare, and I have a very specific question. We are the Silicon Savannah, but then around the Bitcoin chain, the blockchain technology, we are not seeing activity. Or if there is, please help me and let me see where that activity is. Around the apps, the tech community is really sharp on that. And the reason I ask this question is riding on Alice Munyo's comment with regard to Africa needs to define the internet it wants. So what is that blockchain that we want for Africa? And if we can really just narrow down, probably where are the blocks, because our young tech people are not in that space. Or if they are in certain hubs, I think the NAC needs to come out very strongly, because even when we have the discussions around on Kiptonet, we have Bit Pesa, we have Bit Africa, those are the guys who come out with, and it's probably 2 or 3 people from those organizations. They say something that is in tangent with that. The rest of us, we look for documents. Someone wrote from the US, I send in, someone else sends it in. So for ourselves, what's that conversation? Because unless that is there, then there's no way we can talk about, like for example, our central bank expected it, that it will take up this technology, and yet, let me say, our players here, we haven't got it, we haven't understood it yet. We don't expect like the elections body, the IBC, probably to adopt blockchain technology because, or in the UK, they see they're using it. I think the drive needs to come from down here. Who are those grassroots guys who have adopted? What are they doing? Ali has taken us through, it can use in sports, it can use in agriculture, it can use in various sectors. So who are those and how can we highlight those stories? And I think there's a great opportunity beyond when that comes out. Thank you.
Okay, mine will be very quick. My name is Bob Ochieng. I am wearing no hat in this mic. So, very quickly, I think to the panel, maybe if you could comment on some of the myths around blockchain technology. I think some of us are associating this with like ransom, kind of a way to better get ransom. I mean, you can be paid in a way that nobody can trace. How can you, for example, dispel, or what do you need to do, or what needs to be done to dispel these myths around blockchain technology? If you look at the global internet map in 1993, and now, and you focus on Africa, and then you look at the blockchain technology map today, I think we are kind of repeating what was happening in 1993. If you look at Africa in terms of blockchain technology and the rest of the world. What needs to be done so that Africa does not repeat this mistake, so that we move with the rest of the world this time now? I think this is emerging everywhere today. What needs to be done? I think lastly is the issue of organization. I think governments, for example, are comfortable if there is an organized ecosystem around something. Who is behind, or who is the community around blockchain? Are there discussions that are open to everybody that people can actually follow and be part of, so that it is not seen as something very strange, something very fun, and yet there is a developed ecosystem that actually people can follow and that is actually available somewhere. So the panel is respond to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. We'll take two more people. Then we'll go back to the...
Okay. I'm Bundi Kotwanya, CEO of Soft in Kenya. I think one of the youngest companies, but doing fairly well. Now, I think I'm interested in blockchain. It came quite as a new thing to me because we've been innovating around e-commerce and how fast we can penetrate in the Kenyan sector and expanding now to TZ. And one of the key things, it could be a little bit tech savvy. One of the key things we have is, one, how will it disrupt the e-commerce sector in general, and what will be the store values? Now, the communities around it, will people be able to know, she bought a clothes from me, from, let's say, my company? Is it, if they see her in a yellow cloth, will they be able to know everything about what we transact on the e-commerce platforms. Then two, how open source is it? How open source is e-commerce? How fast can we, like the independent innovators, how fast can they be able to get into the system and innovate around the available resources? Finally, what are the policies? What are the laws? Yeah. Did I repeat that now? Oh, it's okay. The first one was how it fits into the e-commerce sector in general. The community, can the communities, guys on the community know everything about the transactions? Two, how open source is it? Can we guys who are innovating independently? Like I remember Madame talked about, for example, the digitization of the lands. And currently we're working with one of the counties in the country to digitize their land systems. Of course, we're using QR, it's a very innovative thing, a very new thing. And can we be able to plug into what the block technology entails so that we can make it large scale? Of course, and finally, being an ICT-based thing, one of the key issues is, you come in, present what you have, put it across, and then after, if it's a cabinet or the guys in charge, very fast, the last one. What is the policy around block technology? How can it integrate all the guys?
I'll be very brief.
Yes, let's keep it brief, guys.
Yeah.
We're running out of time.
I'm Rossielo Gino. I'm a lecturer, I'm a researcher. Very specific question. Blockchains, we talk about distributed databases in form of a linked list here. Now, to be very specific, we boast about the aspect of security, but we look at a legal aspect where we ask ourselves, for how long are we holding this data? Yeah. So how can we ensure, if you look at the Data Protection Act in the UK, we talk about trying to hold data only when it's necessary. How is blockchains going to ensure that we hold this data only when it's necessary? Because from my knowledge, I get to understand that we hold this data forever. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kelvin Kariuki, a teaching assistant at Multimedia University of Kenya. And I'm asking this question for a friend who is the government of Kenya. How will we collect tax from blockchain transactions? Thank you.
Good one. All right. Just one second for the panelists to divide the questions and agree which ones they're going to answer and comment on. As we wait for that, I would like to acknowledge a number of people who have graced our morning today. Not that they're more equal than the rest of us, we just want to sort of acknowledge them. But Rachel Alwana from the Communications Authority, Daniel Obam from the National Communications Secretariat, Ebele Okobi, I hope I'm pronouncing that name properly, Ebele, Policy Manager for Africa for Facebook, Akua, and I will stop there, Akua, not do your surname. Facebook also, Charles Bradley, GP Digital, Henry Miner of Article 19, Isis Nyanga, of course, welcome Isis, Abdallah Omari, Kenik GM, Ezra Chiloba, IEBC, we are really waiting for you, sir. Siende Bali, Tabadali. Sylvia, okay, Sylvia of Hibos, East Africa. Bobo Chia, who doesn't wear any hat. ICANN Global, but he represents ICANN in the region. Telcom Kenya, Simbanet Nelson Biseda, Safaricom Karimi. Karimi, my friend, are you somewhere? I can't see. Moses Karanja of CICIT, and of course, Yako Ditwa of UNESCO and Lydia Keshungi of UNESCO too. Thank you guys. Okay, let's kick off. Rosemary, you can start. Go on. All right.
So thank you for the questions. We're very happy that we've had so much response. Sometimes we have discussions, people just get blank stares. I was saying that sometimes we get blank stares when we start having these discussions. And I must say I'm so happy, like the old man on the video who was talking about the World Wide Web. Yeah, I'm feeling that way today, that many people understand. So Steve, I'll start with you, yeah? The issue you asked about the regulator. Our regulator actually, and I usually call it, acted like an ostrich, buried its head in the sand, said it's not it doesn't affect us, so we're not regulating you. But how have other regulators handled the issue? What Belgium did, they said that it has no significant risk, systemic risk to the banking system. Because what did they look at? They looked at issues of security, they looked at issues of actually security in regards of blocking transactions. Nobody, they can't be double transacted. And then also, our local CBK, what they looked at was anti-money laundering. They were worried that maybe people could use this system to sort of transfer funds in illegal ways. That, in regards to blockchain, can also be an advantage because there's a lot of identification that is done. You can know who's there, unless now you go to dark chains like Samurai or the dark web. Yeah, that's when it's used illegally. And then an easy route of entry, I would say, is because many times as fintech, you go to the regulator and they say, we don't regulate you. How could we go around it? Maybe for free I could say, let's try being technology service providers for our banks, who can then approach the regulator. Because many times you get a stone wall when you try approaching. But today we see Barclays. Barclays has taken up cryptocurrency studies, and they even have companies who they've linked up with to try and understand how is it that we can move to the future. They say that Africa has, I think, 1 billion clients, but they've only been able to get 1% of that. And many of these companies are trying to ask, how can we offer our services to those who are underbanked? I think that would be one way of looking at it. Looking at it as, not as some currency that is used by criminals to undertake criminal activity. Let's look at the technology behind it. So it means looking beyond the bitcoins, but looking at the blockchain technology and the distributed ledgers. I think that for our government would be a very good approach. And then maybe follow suit like the Nigerians now have a working group. I think that would be the best way to handle it. And then the other question was from Kennedy, who had handled, how will we collect tax? The IRS, what the IRS in America did, in conjunction with FinCEN, which is a financial crimes enforcement network, yeah, what they did was they sat down and looked at it and said, okay, you think that wage tax? Let's call this a product. Just like the way you get VAT on a new shirt that you buy or stuff in the supermarket, whenever people engage with blockchain technology, eventually it will be equated to some dollars. And when that happens now, it's taxed based on that. And it's even something that KRA can make use of. First of all, generating taxes from the transactions that are done, and two, also using the technology to sort of like speed up their databases. Thank you.
All right, thanks again. I'll echo Rosemary's comments about how happy I was to hear so many really great questions from everyone in the audience. It was really nice. As she said, I go to a lot of these things as well, and also get a lot of blank stares, but this has been a great audience. So I'm going to tackle a few of the questions that folks asked. The first one I'm going to tackle was the woman who asked that we are the Silicon Savannah here in Kenya, and how can Africa define its own internet? How can Kenya define its own internet? And I think that the way to do it is by engaging. Rosemary called CBK like an ostrich with its head in the sand, and I won't say that because my company, has to stay friends with them. But I think that when you compare it to the way that some other governments in Kenya have engaged, or other governments in Africa have engaged, you do see a big difference. And that's the way that you make progress, is by inventing new products, by creating new opportunities for solutions, by engaging. It's not by hiding, it's not by ignoring the problem. That's how Kenya can maintain status as the Silicon Savannah when it comes to the blockchain technology, like it has in so many other ways. One questioner asked about the myths surrounding Bitcoin. There's a bunch here, and so I'll try to just kind of group them into a few categories and speak about them. First off, there's the belief that Bitcoin is anonymous, and this is simply not true. Every time you conduct a transaction on the Bitcoin, on the blockchain, and this is the beauty of the blockchain that we've all been talking about, is it creates this record. You can see every single time someone transacts a Bitcoin, the sender's account, the recipient's account, tech information related with each of those, IP address, MAC address, physical location, things like that. And then of course the amount and the exact timestamp that it occurs. So it's not completely anonymous in the sense that the person's legal name isn't attached to each of those records, but it's certainly not as anonymous as, say, cash, where cash transactions can happen in a car park and no one ever knows that they've occurred. But even a bank wire is just, you take a look at a SWIFT communique, it's just the account name of the sender, the account name of the recipient, just a long set of numbers and letters. It's only because there's regulations surrounding those traditional banks that you can tie a person's name to that account number. There's absolutely no reason why a government couldn't issue the same sort of regulations for Bitcoin and blockchain technology. The second question, or the second myth about Bitcoin and blockchain is its use by criminals. And I think that this is a very outdated characterization of the way that Bitcoin is used. Way back in 1993, the beginning of the internet, people said that the only thing the internet was used for, was ever going to be used for, was for pornography. People, if you go back and read news articles from back then, that's really what they say. The first year, 18 months that Bitcoin existed, most of the people who were using it were very much on the fringe. But what you've seen in the past several years is just broad, massive adoption. You've seen major banks investing in blockchain technology and investing in Bitcoin as a way to improve their operations. You have major retailers, so Microsoft, you can buy things with Bitcoin. Dell, you can buy computers with Bitcoin. More and more retailers. It's one of the big travel sites like Expedia or Orbitz. Exactly, yeah, you can buy your Tesla, your electric, $300,000 US dollar vehicle using Bitcoin. That I think is just an outdated. It's not to say that it's entirely possible a criminal could use Bitcoin. A criminal can use cash. A criminal can use bank wires. They do. Another myth is that it's used for money laundering, things like that. And I'll pick on Eric. Still dialed in and still hearing us. Or specifically, I'll pick on HSBC, which is a large traditional bank. Does not deal in Bitcoin. Deals in regular old-fashioned government-issued currencies, and then a few years ago paid something like nearly $1 billion fine because of allegations that it was allowing money laundering and sanctions evasion with deals with Sudan and Libya and Iran and a few other countries, I think. And HSBC isn't the only one. Any number of large banks have seen those kinds of fines in the past 5 years, the past decade. None of them involve Bitcoin. If you want to launder money, if you want to evade sanctions, I think the Panama Papers leak from a few months ago shows us that the right way to do it is to operate through the traditional finance system. It's not to use Bitcoin. And then the last myth I'll touch on is terrorism. And I'll say this is a very easy one to answer. There is no publicly reported case of any terrorist activity, any terrorist attack, any terrorist group being funded by Bitcoin. You can search for this. You will find none. Another person asked about who is behind blockchain and how the ecosystem develops. And I think that it's helpful to cite back to the earlier panel talking about who governs the internet, who owns the internet, because it's a similar kind of structure. There's an advisory board, and it's full of lots of smart people who are professors at MIT and Stanford and places like that, who provide kind of general guidance and advice as to the system. But apart from that, it's a bottom-up system. It operates through consensus. The developers who work in this space can propose ideas, propose suggestions, play with the code, and if the system, if all of the people using it adopt those changes, adopt those suggestions, then they become part of the system. It's a very kind of bottom-up democratic approach to the way to govern it. It's not just governed like a top-down mandate. And as we can see with the internet, which is governed in a similar way, it's a system that works. The last question that I've got on my plate is the question about Africa moving with the rest of the world. And this kind of touches on some of the things that I was saying earlier, just about the importance of engagement, the importance of tackling these problems head on as opposed to pretending that they don't exist. So in Nigeria, we've seen the central bank has created this working group, and they did so, we first presented to them in, I believe, October 2015, and they created this group about 6 months, 8 months later. We've gone back to present to the group, and we're now participating with the group. In DRC, my company first presented to the central bank there in January, and we went back there 3-4 weeks ago, and the central bank said, yes, you are approved, and we're going to issue you a letter of no objection. Here in Kenya, we've been a company for 3 years now, and we still can't get a meeting with the central bank. We send a letter about once every 3 months saying, hey, can we please have a meeting now? And we don't hear back. So that's not the way that Africa can lead. Africa can lead if they follow the Nigerian example of putting together a committee of experts to actually formulate questions. They can lead the DRC way, which is allowing companies to operate and letting these things develop organically, but ignoring the problem is not how you lead.
Again, the advantage of speaking last is that most of the stuff is covered. So I'm going to just narrow down to the privacy versus public pros and cons of blockchain technology as number one. So I think it's already been mentioned that blockchain exists as a consensus built database. So one of the consensus that you can agree on is who can see the chain. And that's how it can become private without being corrupted, right? So you can agree and you can write it in the code that only certain people can access or view what's happening on this chain of blocks. So that's how it becomes private without being able to be corrupted. So, and just by making it private opens up a whole new world for its users. So for example, imagine you're working in a corporation and you have your own compliance and regulations of how, for example, your database or entries should be handled. You don't want to expose that to the world, right? So even within a bank, you have privacy agreements with the bank. No, you don't want everybody seeing how much money you're moving or keeping. So it opens up, opening up private blockchain opportunities, then just expands the use of it. So I hope that kind of, without corrupting it at all, because it's just an extra instruction on top of the consensus that you can build in any other way. So there's a gentleman who talked about land registry. I can see him at the back. Please see me after this. I know people who are already doing this with the Swedish government. They're trying to use blockchain technology for the whole of Sweden and the land issues there. So we can talk more about this. There's the issue about trust and value and control around blockchain. I think, and I totally understand, I would try to imagine why CBK and KRA would have concerns about blockchain. Blockchain democratizes trust, value, and control over the transfer of value, and that's basically their business. So, and initially, every government will always react like, hold on until we figure out this thing. We do not know what exactly it is. Let's figure it out before we can decide whether or not to accept it or regulate it or license it or do whatever with it. And I think it's still initial right now, but what we're trying to say is that the sooner you accept it, the better. You can check out Deloitte Technology on their Twitter handle, Deloitte Tech. There is massive educational materials about how blockchain technology can be used for governance, for financial transparency, for taxation. And I think, as it has already been said, there's a lot more to gain than there is to lose by adopting blockchain technology early. So there was a question that was asked earlier about how do we invite new audiences onto the internet. The way literacy was, just reading literacy was moved in this country in the early 40s and 50s is because missionaries wanted people to read the Bible. That's why they built schools for people to be able to read. They were teaching them to read so that they could read the Bible. And the same thing for the internet. If you want people to come onto the internet, there's going to be a driver of why they're coming onto the internet. So same thing, for example, with M-Pesa, a lot of people bought and still keep Safaricom lines majorly because of M-Pesa. And of course, Safaricom has very many other good products, but M-Pesa is one of the main reasons a lot of people have phones today. So we believe that blockchain technology is one thing that will move a lot more people onto the internet, because if you are able to transfer value without necessarily having to use Kenya shillings or US dollars or British pounds, then just having activity on the internet, if that generates value for you, then you'll come onto the internet. And to just wrap this up, I would like us to also focus as we think about, and the people represented here, I would like us to think about blockchain technology outside Bitcoin and outside even cryptocurrency, because just reading through the CPK directive, it was as if blockchain and Bitcoin is the exact same thing. Blockchain is the technology on which Bitcoin is built. And of course, Bitcoin was one of the first cryptocurrencies. But over the last couple of years, other people have built different kinds of technology on top of the blockchain technology. So there's a lot more advantage on this. So for example, I like this example of gambling and that of things. Because that, imagine like an established university like USIU who are battling over their land. I mean, that's something that shouldn't happen at all. Because the records are there, the records are clear. What blockchain would help is that everybody in Kenya then would have access of that chain that was I think it was the nation of the standard that actually drew a map of how that piece of land was transacted over time. That's basically what blockchain will do in a couple of seconds for everyone. But again, you can also choose to make it private and use it internally. So I think we've covered most of the questions. And please see us after this.
That's fabulous. All right, so thanks guys. For me, just to wrap this up, I would just want to read one paragraph. And then I will close this session and move us to the next one. In 2014, a consortium of over 42 banks from 4 continents with a market cap of over $600 billion joined together to build a platform using digital currency technology. Indian bank Axis Bank is pursuing its own platform, as are several Indian software service providers and IT consulting firms. No African bank has participated in a digital currency technology pilot or program. Now, I'll leave that to you guys, whether you want to call it a red flag, green flag, blue flag, multiple flag, whatever. But to just mention a number of the banks that we're talking about here: Barclays, Banco, Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, Bank of America, ING, Citi, Nomura, Unicredit, JP Morgan, National Australia Bank, Danske Bank, HSBC, BBVA, and the list goes on. Thank you very much. I would now like to excuse my panelists. Thank you very much. And ask